Hi, we have some videos for you. They are teaching aids. And what I want to stress to everyone is that these videos are not to take the place of a teacher. They are to aid the teacher and the student. A lot of times a student will go take a lesson, he gets home, he starts to practice, and he says, what did he tell me to do now? I forgot, or did he mean for me to do this, or did he mean for me to do that? And there are a lot of problems, and he has to wait the whole week or the whole 2 weeks until he goes back to his teacher to get this ironed out. What we want to do is repair that. He can put his video on, look at it, run it forward, run it backward, and it will fill in the gaps until he gets back to his teacher. And you will find that it will eliminate a lot of problems between the teacher and the student. I hope you enjoy these tapes, and I hope you work hard with them, because we put a lot of time in on them, and they're especially for your help. Today, we are going to present a gentleman who I sometimes refer to as the eighth wonder of the world. He has a particular way of playing what we call slap bass that most of you have never seen or heard of before. Back in the 30s, when I first started playing bass, if you couldn't play the bass like this, you couldn't get a job. And I played it a little bit, but nothing like this gentleman who does it now. I'd like to present to you Mr. Milt Hinton.
Hey, man.
The judge.
Hi.
How are you?
Just fine, thank you. How you
It's
doing?
good to see you.
Yeah.
Now, Judge, I want to ask you a couple of questions.
Yeah.
First question is this. When was it you first started playing slap bass, and what inspired you to try it?
I decided to try to play it because for solos, because I found that it was very difficult to play solos, and after hearing you, I found I had to get something to do to get out in front a little bit.
You're going to put me on the hot seat.
Yeah, well, I had to do it, man. And I said, well, see, I got to try this, and I began to think about things that I heard when I was a kid back in Chicago in 1923, when Louis Armstrong and King Oliver came up. I was delivering newspapers there, and I used to watch these cats, you know, and I saw this big red man, Bill Johnson, big guy. He played bass, and he stomped his foot and said, jump ahead, and he pulled his string straight out, and he big slap, and the people loved him. See, down in New Orleans, they used to play the bass horn, but when they got to Chicago, in the small nightclubs, they didn't need those bass horns because it was too tight in there, so they used to use bass fiddles. There was no, you couldn't march, no parades, you couldn't march to the cemetery in Chicago.
That's right.
So they decided to use bass fiddles. And Bill Johnson was one of the first bass fiddle players out of New Orleans. And everybody was playing the bass, preparing to play. Now there's a shortage of bass fiddle players, so all of the trombone players that used to play in those marching bands, now that they're in Chicago and we don't have any marching bands, they begin to pick up the bass fiddle. And they begin to, what you call it, fisting the bass. You call it, what do you call it?
Choking the chicken.
Choking the chicken.
Yeah, like this. Yeah.
But they're choking the chicken, and they're plucking this bass and making this big noise. And Winston Walker and all of these kind of guys, and Lindsay, John Lindsay, these guys, trombone players, had changed over to bass fiddle. And I began to hear them. And if you look at the jazz history and hear the old records, Bill Johnson and Winston Walker and John Lindsay were some of the top bass players. They were the ex-trombone players.
Let me ask you about a couple other gentlemen that I read about. A couple of them I saw. One I sat under the piano every day and listened to a broadcast of the Count Basie Band back in 1936 in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And Walter Page was playing bass.
We called him Biggin.
Biggin, right.
Biggin, yeah, we called him Biggin. He was a big guy, and he played strong. And
you could hear it for 2 blocks.
Yeah, he picked it strong, and just looked like he was so relaxed back there.
That's right.
He could set that bass on his stomach and just play it, just walk at and we just
And how about Wellman Bro?
Wellman Bro, that was my idol. I just worshipped him. He was with Duke Ellington's band. And when they came through Chicago, I was standing at the dance hall, standing on him, and I would just look at him and admire him and wish he'd drop his Ross just so I could pick it up and hand it to him.
Oh, yeah.
And I sit there, and Ripley had written about him, how many notes he could play a minute. And that thing Duke Ellington played to ring them bells. Or he played a 2-beat man that you could hear 2 blocks down the street.
That's right.
Wellman Bro, and a gentleman, wore Hamburg hats and dressed very dapper.
Yeah.
A real New Orleans gentleman. I loved him.
All right. I wanted to ask you about one other guy before
Yeah.
I have you do this demonstration. How about this guy, Al Morgan?
Oh, he was another classic guy, and tall and handsome. I loved him, man. In fact, I took his place in Cab Calloway's band when he left Cab. When he left Cab, he was about 6'6", and he dressed so dapper, and he was pretty, man. He wore sharp clothes, and I wouldn't say anything to him because I was too shy, but I wanted to see how a bass player acted when he got off the stage. Yeah. And he'd come outside, and but the ladies would ask him for an autograph, and he'd reach in his pocket, and he'd sign autograph. Then he'd reach back and he'd pick up a sheet of stamps, and he'd pull one off and lick it and stick it on the autograph, and it was his picture. His picture. I said, wow, man, I got to do that.
If John Clayton never hears that,
oh, I tell you,
I'll have trouble with it.
I'm telling you, this is great.
All right, listen. You know what I'd like you to do? I'd like to get your bass and show us an example of some of these things.
Okay, I'll show you how we did it. Yeah, I'll do that. So here's where they used to play it. They pick the bass straight out. It's more rhythm style. But I wanted to do a little differently because by the time I got ready to play, I wanted to play a little solo, maybe put some little melodic things in there and still keep the time. Because I used to go in bars with just a guitar player or with a violin player, and there was no drums, so I had to keep time, and then I wanted to play some rhythm, keep and play a melody too. So I began to play it so I could get in, pick a quarter, and slap 2/8. Pick a quarter and slap triplets. Pick a quarter and slap 4/8. Try to mix it up. And I tripled. And I found out I had to keep my hand in close because if I got way out here, it's a time element, and I couldn't get back in time. So I had to use my inside of my hand and slap on the E, on the A and the E string, and stay in close. Then I could play something like I play a melody. Things and get together with it. And I find by keeping it in close like this and playing this way, I can play a melody, or I can do anything I want to do solo-wise, and then maybe I'd be out of your way, Ray. You understand what I'm talking about? So this is, again, then Cab Calloway asked me to do a tune for him once on recordings, and that's probably the one you heard. And I think Roy Eldridge or somebody wrote that song, but whatever it was, I just played some things, and Dizzy Gillespie was there, and we just had a ball playing it, so I was slapping the bass. Different kind of things, and it kind of worked. At least the people would hear that, make a lot of noise, and every now and then you'd hear a note. So the young kids begin to listen to it, and I felt like I was kind of accomplishing something, so I've been trying to do that. That was 1910. I was 3 months old. I was born in 1910, and my mom, I got a dress on there. You know, little boys wore dresses when you're 3 months old back in those days. And then we had a fetish for photography, because here's a picture, the very first picture of me, 1910, 3 months old. That's my mother, Hilda Gertrude Robinson Hinton. And that's, I think that's where I got my name, my first nickname. In the black communities, usually everybody's got a nickname. And I think the first one that was hung on me was called Sporty. My mom dressed me up in this little sailor suit, a white sailor suit, and a little blue tie around me. And I think from then on they started calling me Sporty. Oh, that stayed with me all through high school, Sporty. I did my first violin lesson July 18th, 1923. And that's my mother peeping around the corner there. There's some little guy whose face is right below her. I can't remember who that is. But the big guy with the violin is my play brother, Edward Burke. We were inseparable all of our lives. He just passed away last year or so. But we were just inseparable. We grew up studying violin together and playing together. We got in all kinds of trouble together. And that was the first house we owned in Long Island. It was on Rusco Street. We had a little house, a two-family house in a neighborhood called Brooktown. All of the houses were sort of similar, semi-attached, with a two-car garage and a nice little backyard. And we were really just beginning to get ourselves established in New York City. And I'm on the back porch there with my daughter Charlotte. I always consider Charlotte more or less, Mona and I feel that she's more or less the turning point in our lives, because things began to get better for us after Charlotte was born. That was about 1947, I guess it was, Mona, right? Oh, that's a great night. That was a great night in the White House, one unforgettable one. That was President Nixon was giving Duke Ellington the Medal of Honor, and he had given a big party at the White House for him, and invited all of the black dignitaries and whites also of the music world to come and be at this party for Duke Ellington at the White House. For his 70th birthday it was. Cab Calloway. That was a great band to be in. I was in that band 16 years, from 1935 to 1951. And it got to be more like a family. And around that time, most of the big bands, which were study bands like the Woody Herman's band and Cab Calloway's and Glenn Miller's band and Duke Ellington's band, they formed a baseball team to sort of give us a little recreation in between. If we were in the same town, like if we were both playing in New York, we'd go out to Central Park and have a little competition and play baseball. Oh yeah, let me look at that again. Now that's for Jackie. Well, Jackie is one of my really benefactors. I'm really grateful to have known him, to be around him. He gave me my first chance to go in a recording studio with a big band and record. I did the Music for Lovers Only with Bobby Hackett, with a big string orchestra. And I'm almost sure that every record that Jackie Gleason made after that, Music for Lovers Only, I was a bass player on it. So he was really a good pal to me. I did all of the honeymoons with Jackie Gleason. That's interesting. We had just come back from Japan. We'd been in Japan for a couple of months, and that was right after New Year's Eve. It was the 1st January of 1954. We'd been in Japan. It was Louis Armstrong's first trip to Japan, and man, the people came out of the woodworks to see him. And looked like Louis was the kind of guy that there were very few places that he hadn't been. But when he'd go to a place for the first time, it looked like he'd outdo himself trying to please the audience. His playing would be so fantastic. I remember once he was playing so great, I'm standing up there playing with him. I forgot to play. I was listed. I was, oops, I'm supposed to be playing. Yeah, that's a milestone record date. We'd been on that record date. Rex Stewart was a unique man. He had that unique style of playing, boy meets horns type of glisten, and of course Vic Dickinson. Everybody knows what a handy man he was with the trombone. And I was lucky enough to belong to that society of great, interesting players, and they took me in on this record date. I'm very proud to have been a part of some of those recordings because they're now milestones. Oh yeah, that was a television show over in Newark, New Jersey. And at that time, Ed Shaughnessy and I were part of his rhythm section, and it was such a joy. I was still having a great deal of fun working with the great Ed Shaughnessy, who's now with the Tonight Show, and we do clinics up in the New York State at Skidmore College, and we were very happy to play with Benny at that time. We called each other. Joe Jones was one of my favorite unforgettable drummers. I sure enjoyed working with him, and He was a great milestone in rhythm sections. We called each other section. You know, hello, section, we mean the rhythm section. And this is just one of the many photos that I took with Joe. I was happy to be around him and be in his company and playing on any engagement with him. Oh yeah, that was one of the Newport Jazz Festivals, 1971 in Newport, Connecticut. Newport, Rhode Island, I guess it is. And all the great jazz musicians were there, and that picture shows Charlie Mingus and Dizzy Gillespie. And evidently Charlie Mingus had told Dizzy a good story, and Dizzy is really cracking up. I'm glad to get some of those wonderful pictures because they're so priceless to see them around. I never in my wildest dreams thought that they would be of any interest. I was just taking them because I wanted to have them. But now to see it, so much time has passed and so many things have happened that these pictures are really interesting now to look at and to preserve, to see what was going on and what was happening during that whole era. Oh yes, that was down Park Avenue. That's at the French Embassy. And I had been invited. Duke Ellington was receiving a medal from France, their highest civilian honor, which is I'm thinking of the name of that. It's like the Medal of Honor from the United States, the Legion of Honor, and the French Embassy was going to give Duke Ellington the Legion of Honor medal, and I was there, of course, and I was just delighted. Oh, I think that's at the UN. Yeah, we did a concert. You know, happens all over the place, and he's an old buddy of mine. We grew up in Chicago together. We were in a newspaper band, and Chicago Defender had a youth band in Chicago, and Hamp and I were both in this band. In fact, Hamp was in there because he was a day or two older than I, and when I applied to join the band, he didn't want me in there because I had on short pants, and he was still in long pants. Yeah, well, I guess everyone knows about Huey Blake, what a wonderful man he was, and what a great writer. He wrote some great tunes, and he's just the type of a role model for any musician. He's a man that lived to be 100 years and 5 days, but he was back a veteran that wrote such great hits as Memories of You, and some Broadway shows. He wrote some Broadway shows, and till the day he died, he was very active. I try to explain two different ways of playing the triplet. One is playing a quarter note and then making three eighths of the triplet. And another way is to make the triplet, the whole triplet, part of it is pizzicato the first note and pick the other two. Which I try to use the triplet. One is to pick the quarter note and then play the whole triplet, slap the whole triplet. Pick the quarter note and slap the whole triplet. And the other way is to pick the first note of the triplet and slap the other two. Oh yeah, man! You got this. Well, you should know about Beefsteak Charlie. That was downtown on 50th Street, right off Broadway, between Broadway and 8th Avenue, near Broadway, and that was a musician's watering hole, as we call it. A very interesting place to be. We met there every day, and the history of the place, Beefsteak Charlie's, years ago it had been a high class steakhouse, but as time has gone by, it was now just a little bar with sawdust on the floor. And the upstairs, they had an upstairs where people used to go up and have beefsteak dinners. But now there was no more of that anymore. And there's the boss, the guy that owned it, Herman, that the musicians keep their instruments up there. So when you got through with a gig or something, you didn't have to take your instruments home. You could take upstairs in Beefsteak Charlie's, and nobody ever took anybody's instruments from there. Oh yeah, Gary Carter. He's considered one of the truly great bass players of the world. In fact, he's in possession of Mr. Skuzoviski, who was conductor of the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and considered it in the early days to be one of the truly great bass players of the world. And Gary Carter has his bass. Mrs. Skuzoviski let Gary Carter use his bass. And Gary Carter's a fantastic bass player and a dear friend, a very wonderful man to know. Oh yeah, Mingus was a dear friend of mine. I knew him when he was quite a young guy, and I was so proud to see him. Like I've seen so many wonderful bass players come up and perform and do so many wonderful, wondrous things. And we were always friends. And whenever Mingus had a band, when he'd get famous and he had a band and worked with strings or something like that, he'd always invite me to be one of the bassists in his band. And this is a trip we made to do a concert in Philadelphia for an album called Let the Children Hear My Music. And I was just proud to be on that album with Mingus.
I hope all of you have enjoyed looking at this tape as much as we have enjoyed making it for you. And I think you will have to admit that Milt Hinton is a very unique individual, and I hope you put a lot of practice in so you can learn how to do some of those slaps.